Hey there, Tiktakers! There's very little left for the premiere of the new video game The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. And from Draw the Life Tiktak, we're living up your weight with a horror story. We hope you enjoy it. Link, the young warrior from Hyrule, had been summoned by Princess Zelda to help with an investigation. Several inhabitants of the kingdom were disappearing without a trace, and no one knew why. The young man began his search in the nearby towns, and by talking to the neighbors, they all agreed that they had seen a dark figure with an evil aura hanging around the area. The figure wore a hood that hid his face in a black robe. While exploring the depths of the forest, Link found a cavern behind a waterfall. The entrance was hidden behind a rock. Upon entering, he saw that the walls were covered in mold and mildew. He had to keep his balance to keep from falling because the ground was wet and slippery. He ventured deeper into the cavern with his sword in hand. He didn't know what or who he could find. From a wild animal trying to defend itself, or perhaps a much more dangerous human. He kept walking slowly and suddenly found himself in a huge room filled with burning torches. In the center was an altar with a statue of the goddess Hylia. He approached it and could see that the statue was covered with diamond tears. Suddenly, automatically, a secret door opened behind the altar, and a descending staircase became visible. Link, although distrustful, began to descend through it without letting go of his sword. As he went down, the air became colder and more humid, and the smell of mold and damp became more intense. When he reached the end, he found himself in a large underground chamber. In the center was a statue of the king of Hyrule, also with diamond tears. Suddenly, he heard a noise and turned around quickly. A dark figure lunged at him and pinned him down. He began to speak in a language unknown to the young warrior, although he could perceive by the tone that his words were full of hate and malice. Link tried to free himself, but that figure was stronger than him. After an intense struggle, he managed to free himself and post his enemy. He fell on top of the king's statue, which instantly broke into pieces. Diamond tears began to rain all over the room. Link, dazed and confused, ran towards the dark figure and removed his hood to learn his identity. He was petrified to discover that there was nothing below but a mold-covered human skull. Suddenly, a noise made him jump, and he turned to find the real dark figure. A tall, slender woman with thick black hair covering her face. The woman began to laugh maniacally, raised her hand and created a blast of dark energy that violently threw Link against the wall. The young man lost consciousness, and when he woke up, he found himself in a dirty and damp cell. He tried to escape, but that dungeon was sealed with black magic. A laugh behind him made him turn to find himself face to face with that sorceress. The woman assured him that he would never see the light of day again, and that he would be sacrificed to honor the dark god. All his efforts to fight his enemy were useless. The woman managed to knock him unconscious again. When he opened his eyes, he found himself on an altar bound hand to foot, surrounded by candles and strange figures. The sorceress was going to start the ritual for his sacrifice. Just as the knife was about to reach his chest, a ray of light reached the dark room, causing the woman to flee in fright, leaving the young warrior alone and disoriented. Navi, the little fairy, appeared with Link's sword to help him escape from that horrible place. Together, they found the exit and ran to alert Princess Zelda about the threat that hung over the kingdom. Link knew that his adventure had only begun and that, once again, he had to fight to save the kingdom from the clutches of darkness.
So, I'll introduce myself. My name is John Coiffure, and now that the story of Ben Drowned has become popular, I'd like to clarify some facts that I've been researching on after his death. I'll start from the beginning. Ben and I went to school together. He was a very shy boy, but we became friends right away as we shared one passion: video games. One of our favorite games was The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask for Nintendo 64. Ben was a slim boy with blonde hair to his shoulders and his eyes were sky blue. Everyone considered him a weirdo because his personality was different. The bullies in the class, Matt, Jack, and Alex, constantly picked on him. Matt was the worst of them. He was despicable, and he had a scar on his lip from an old fight he usually bragged about.
Awesome!
Poor Ben's situation at home wasn't very nice either. His dad had died the previous year in a car accident. Right before dying, Ben had told him about his problems at school, and he had calmed him down. "I'll go talk to your teacher tomorrow. I'm sure it would all have a wonderful ending, right?" He kissed him on his forehead and laughed, without knowing those were his last words. Ben didn't smile much. The happiest I had seen him is when he bought the Majora's Mask game with the money he had been saving. He would spend hours and hours playing, and he always had it with him. "I wish I was like Link and I could be brave and face those bullies," he would usually say. One day, I went to his house to pick him up and go to school together. When I got there, he was playing the Majora's Mask game. I remember he saved the game in the Skull Kid phase. Then, he put the game inside his bag and we left for school. During the break, he came to me, desperate, because Matt had been searching in his stuff and his game had disappeared. I went to the teacher's room with him to tell what had happened, and we went to find Matt. "Ben, are you sure it was Matt?" the teacher asked. "Yes, I saw him searching on my bag." "Don't worry, you won't see it again," I heard Matt whisper with a dark voice. The teacher asked Matt to empty his bag. There was the game, without the label. Ben asked me to hold on to it. He was afraid I would take it from him again after school. He told me he would call me to meet at some safe place and give it to him. When I got home, I was waiting for his call. 10 minutes passed, then 20, 30, and the phone didn't ring. I was worried. What if Matt and the others had done something to him? I ran to Ben's house with the game on my hand. Right before reaching his house, I heard cries and moans coming from the shore of a nearby lake. I got closer, and then I saw Matt, Jack, and Alex next to Ben laying on the floor, hurt. He was screaming in pain and covering his face with his hands. I stood there some meters from them, and I saw Matt grab a wooden stick from the floor. "You were saying you saw me taking your stupid game, huh? Don't worry, you won't see anything ever again." He put the stick in one of Ben's eyes and then in the other one. Ben was desperately screaming. The show was horrifying. I wanted to do something, but I couldn't move. Blood was falling from his sockets, covering his face and his clothes. I threw up and started crying. "You shouldn't have done that," Ben said to Matt. Matt grabbed him by his neck and dragged him to the lake. He sunk his head in the water, drowning him while he laughed and laughed. Jack and Alice got scared and they ran away. When Matt finished his job, he let Ben's dead body go and left in the same direction. Nobody was there anymore. I got close to Ben. My legs were shaking. I held him on my arms, hugging him, without letting go of the Majora's Mask game that I still had in my hand. I remained like that until the police came. They had been warned by a neighbor. My best friend was dead and I couldn't do anything to avoid it. I still have nightmares about this. When I went back home, I went to the bathroom to get rid of the blood. The Zelda game was also dirty. I wiped it and saw something handwritten on it, a word, Majora. I hadn't realized about this earlier, but I didn't think it was important. The next day, when I woke up, the game was gone. I looked everywhere, but couldn't find it. After telling the police about what had happened, they sent Matt to a juvenile detention center. 3 days after that, his death under strange circumstances was on the news. They said his eyes had come out of his sockets while he was playing The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. On the TV, they showed a picture of the game. It was exactly like Ben's, the one I had, with the same handwritten word. I almost passed out. I felt a chill. What was happening? I started investigating and I found out Jack and Alice had also died in the same way as Matt. It had to be Ben's revenge. But things didn't stop there. Everything started to get more serious and more deaths took place. I got in touch with people who had played the same version of the damned game to know what was different about it from the original. There was a saved game with Ben's name. Usually, Skull Kid would show up in faces where he's not supposed to be, staring at you. and Link's sinister statue followed you everywhere, doing weird things with evil, bloody eyes. One day, I borrowed the game. While I was playing, Link's statue appeared, and when the game was over, one of the screens said, "You've had a terrible ending, right?" I was stunned. It was a very similar sentence to the one Ben's stat told him before the accident. There was a face that didn't appear for the other players. When Link was dying, the dialogue said, "Even though you didn't help, I don't hold anything against you, my friend." So it is true. There is a cursed version of the Zelda game where Ben Drowned enjoys playing with your mind to scare you. His image will haunt you even when you sleep until you probably lose your mind.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode!